Good afternoon and welcome to today's session of Journey to 6 Stars. My name's Sara Rathborn and I'm the sector lead on the NABERS team. Unfortunately, my co-host Zoe Baker can't be with me today. She's sick and doesn't have much of a voice, so it's just me. But this session's really designed to take you through the basics of how to get from 0 to 2 to 4 to 6 stars and beyond. We're going to go through the structure of a good sustainability strategy. But if you're midway on your journey, there should be some useful tips for you anyway. So take what you can, and we hope it's nice and fruitful. I'm going to deep dive into most of the following sections, but for a good sustainability strategy begins with finding your baseline with data. So energy, water, and waste, that's what it entails. From that, you want to be able to set realistic and ambitious targets. And that's a stretch, an annual target, and a monthly tracking that we'll get to. Thirdly, working out a staged approach to be able to meet those targets. Fourth, budget. You want to be able to have a good budget for your measure and management pillars. And fifth, building and embedding sustainability into your business. Once you've really done all that, you're really ready to go public with your target and use third-party reporting endorsement. So let's begin with finding your baseline. It might sound simple, but you need to know where you stand. And accurate measurement is crucial as a foundation to be able to build that sustainability strategy. Using metering at site for energy and water in particular is really important because you don't want to be able to set some very ambitious target and find out your data is inaccurate. So this is when NABERS ratings are really helpful. They provide an audit on site and they do accurate measurement of meters, and there's a bit of the calibration process. So very helpful to get you on your way. But some other quick tools that are really helpful for baseline is making sure you can have your data structured in one linear way and you're mapping out all the steps to get your data. So it is a shame, but most of the time sustainability, it's not a core business function. So you might be needing to rely on some of the finance teams because that's where budgeting sits and that's where the energy information or water information or waste information is. So really trying to, in the first instance, map out where do you need to get your data from, and as much as possible, as if you can get it in your budget, having an online data management program. So that's where all your data can get aggregated, store it in that way, and it really helps with your reporting. Also, backtracking off that, you want to make sure the process is as automated as possible. So as much as you can get those energy, water, and waste contractors to use APIs to be able to send data to that platform. It doesn't always work if you're trying to get site teams to be manually loading data into this program and platform, and there's room for error, but it also doesn't really help them with trying to work with you to get the sustainability target if you're just giving them more work. So they're the quick wins for getting your baseline. But now thinking of your site as 0 to 2 stars, what can you do in the 0 to 2 stars phase to start to see you move towards that 2 to 4 stars and beyond? This is when sub-metering is really helpful. You want to make sure you've got I spoke to metering before as a whole, total energy, total water, but you want to make sure all the assets and plant at site are sub-metered, and those meters also have fault detection analytics on it. So you can detect and understand, the on-site teams can know when analytics is being applied and when potentially machinery is being overused, they can go and fix the leakages as quick as possible. Secondly, a really helpful thing is Bms Optimization. So Bms is your building management systems. You want to make sure as much as possible, the on-site teams can know what they can change that's actually not going to cost anything, but they'll probably still meet thermal comfort. They have to meet thermal comfort conditions. So, can you turn plant on a little later in the morning? Can you turn it off a little earlier due to that type of season? And over a yearly period, that really saves a lot of money. Also in this is a LED lighting upgrade. So small capex, everywhere in the spaces are lit really well. You want to make sure spaces are using LEDs and as much as possible a censored lighting, because that really does help with getting you there. So moving back to the baseline, where we want to go to next. We want to be able to set very ambitious but also realistic targets. Very important. So all market leading companies now, they are doing carbon neutral and or net zero targets. This might be a 10 to 20 year goal in your company. It doesn't happen overnight and it might take a long time to get there, but you want that stretch target in place. And behind that, you need to have annual targets of energy, water and waste. So what are the goals you need to hit annually to be able to meet that stretch target? And peeling back off that, you want to be able to also share with the sites what's the monthly tracking required for energy, water and waste to meet the annual target that helps to meet the stretch target. This is a really crucial step, as much as you can be communicating and indicating the performance required of the sites and as a portfolio to the relevant site teams and broader teams. It's a big stepping stone for success. So you've done the baseline, you've set the ambitious targets, now it's that staged approach to meet the targets. So you kind of know what you need to hit each month, year to year, but you need to know the activities that's going to help you to hit that. And that's really in the budgeting section that we'll get to. But for now, I'm going to share a video from Rob Sims, who's at Dexus, and they've had carbon neutral targets out in the market for a while, and they definitely are sustainability champions.
So recently we've seen an increased focus in sustainability across both our customers, our own people, and our service providers. This increased attention is focusing decision-making, plans and initiatives, which is seeking to create an enriched experience for occupants in buildings. We leverage NABERS and Green Star as key development and operational tools. We have certified our portfolio both under the NABERS suite of energy, water, waste and indoor environment, and we've also achieved a Green Star performance rating across our portfolio. Often targeting sustainability for sustainability's sake can alienate key stakeholders, and taking a collaborative and inclusive process and understanding the shared value and the holistic value that's been created is often a key ingredient to making sure everybody's on board and therefore the project is set up for success.
So Rob touched on a couple really important points there. You know, they certify their performance and they measure what they've achieved, and they're very good at sharing their progress milestones. You can really see in that business that they're working with all the different teams and they all can communicate sustainability really effectively, and they have that shared value of trying to get to the outcome of carbon neutrality. So where they're really the champions at is that embedding sustainability phase, which is what we want to get to now. It's really important when you're starting to look at, who do you need to get motivated on this journey? You need to know where it initiated from. Was it from investors? Was it from customers? Was it from competitors? And it came down from senior management. As you know, our lead competitor has this carbon neutral strategy. What are we going to do? Because once you know who initiated it, you want to have really strong communication channels back to them, communicating progress and wins, but also, the end goal and the budget required to get there, because they're going to be your biggest champions at getting that budget approved. Communication channels are really important internally as well as externally, but you want to make sure, you've got your online reporting platform in a way that you can pull data really easily to be able to give marketing bite-sized bits of information to share on their social channels, but also be able to share progress to senior management so potentially they can be speaking about the updates in the big internal and external events that they attend. This is a step where you also need to make sure you speak their language. Not everyone wants to hear about the emancipated polar bear and the carbon reductions required to get to carbon neutral and beyond and 6 stars, but they might want to just know about the dollar signs. So that's when it's really important to make sure you've got your data in a way that you can flip it. You can say, yes, this building's 6 stars, but this building's also saved $500,000 in energy costs over the last 5 years from all the upgrades it's done. And long term, that's a huge amount of energy reduction. So really making sure, again, you've got your data in a way that allows you to do that in a not too hard manner, but also your audience and you're communicating to them in the way that they're kind of more reciprocal, they're more wanting to hear it, useful to them. So also at this phase now, you've embedded sustainability, you've done it all, you need to go public with your target. All market-leading companies have publicly committed targets, and it's really important because once your target is public, it also extremely helps you with that internal management of your budget because it secures the budget. You've made this public commitment. Now we have to do all these activities required to get to that target. In this stage, you're definitely in the 2 to 4 star zone and beyond. But you also want to make sure you've got your budget in those 2 pillars that I kind of mentioned at the start. So there's the measurement pillar, and you don't want them to be competing with each other. So the measurement pillar is really about, as I was speaking to at the start, with the online data management programs, ideally APIs, having your data in a really secure way, but also making sure the business is already winning or already agrees with you on that third-party reporting piece. It's never as strong if customers go out or if companies go out and make their own claims to customers on their sustainability or other credentials. It always looks a lot better when you've got that market endorsement from third-party platforms, such as NABERS, GRESB, and Green Star, and there's many more. So as much as you can have that measurement pillar budget set aside for yearly reporting to different tools, that does allow that third-party endorsement. So you've got your public target, you've got third parties endorsing that, yes, your performance is at that level and you are trending in the right direction, and that you've got that measurement pillar onto one side. So then we move to the management pillar, the second side. You don't want them to be in competition, as I said, because the management pillar is all about, like, what are you actually going to do? What are the actual activities that have to happen or plant upgrades that need to occur to be able to get you to, 2 to 4 stars and 4 to 6 stars and beyond? I think this is the fun part. This is the part where you need to make sure, number one, you've got your asset registers up to date for every site. So asset registers is all the plant and equipment that's at every site. You want to make sure you know what it is, and you know when it's meant to be needing an upgrade. When is it its end of life? Once you have these two things, that's when you'd hope the capital works team, or else you work with the capital works team to have a 5 to 10 year capital works strategy. And then so if that site's got to get to 6 stars, what plant's coming up for upgrade in the next 5 to 10 years to be able to get you to that 5 to 6 stars and beyond. This is a good time to start to make sure your capital works team, knows the 2 future scenarios, because you want them to make sure that when they're sending out their specifications for potentially an escalator or a lift upgrade, that it does have really strong energy efficiency requirements. And they're giving the briefs back to the capital works team in ways of, yes, you'll save this amount of energy per year. So you can actually compare the assets that are going to be chosen on the energy potential or the energy savings you might be able to make. But potentially the more energy efficient lift that has analytics might cost a little bit more upfront. But if you can be able to show them an equation of, over time in a 5 to 10 to 20 year process, the actual energy savings would outweigh that initial upfront cost, then it's obviously better to go for that plant. And this is a really good stage to leap back to, making sure that capital works team don't even have you in the room and they're picking the most energy efficiency specs. That's when really, sustainability is strongly getting embedded and you've got a very strong indicator for success coming ahead. So wrapping up this, 2 to 4 star section, you want to make sure you've embedded sustainability, you've got publicly committed targets, you've got your budget set for that measure and management pillar. You also have the capital works teams working with you, and they have it in their specifications that go out to market for the upgrades for energy efficiency as a key decision-making indicator. And all the capital works plans and asset registers are written up. So now we're going to hear from another sustainability champion, Parag Shinde.
In 2017, what we started to do is some foundational activities on the portfolio, so baselining, setting up data streams, robotic automation process on billing management and utility management and emissions. We also implemented some smart contracts on mechanical, electrical, hydraulic, fire, waste and water. That sort of gave us an impetus to achieve about 20% reduction in emissions on the portfolio, just operationally optimizing the portfolio. Once we had set that up, the next step from 2019 for us was to focus on having good quality asset registers and asset plans and capital and OPEX plans for the portfolio. So we implemented a substantial amount of energy and water technologies and initiatives over a period of 3 years. That sort of in December last year helped us achieve more than 50% emission reduction. We crossed like 5-star NABERS energy rating portfolio wide and 5-star water. We also achieved one of the first Green Star 5-star whole building portfolio rating and a climate active carbon neutral portfolio.
So Parag mentioned a lot of the success steps we were talking about before. He spoke to asset registers, the operational improvements, and also that whole publicly committed targets, and he had portfolio-wide 5-star NABERS averages across the portfolio, which is really impressive. This was all at his previous work at Property New South Wales. He has actually recently moved to Australian Unity, so we're very excited to see what he gets up to there. Good luck. Now we're going to move into the higher performance brackets, the 4 to 6 stars. What's required here? So, at this stage, sustainability has been embedded, publicly committed targets are at play, they're out in the market. You're doing the third-party performance reporting to different tools like GRESB, Greenstar, and NABERS. The budget has been approved for all the operational efficiency related activities. And you want to make sure that's not just a one-off conversation with site teams. Month to month, when the site teams are meeting, you want them to be constantly trying to work, what can they fine tune in a building to just get some small energy efficiency savings? Even if it's small, over time it does add up. This is when it's also good to have an escalation process. So if you've got the monthly tracking that you've sent out to all the teams, and there's one site in particular that's just trending in the wrong directions for about 3 months, good opportunity to get yourself, your team, your senior management to the site with all the relevant contractors in the room and start really just focusing in and concentrating with them, what's required to move this site, trend it back in the right direction, and work with them ongoing till you've got them back in the right direction. This is, again, a good part of just that escalation process. You've got your portfolio going this way, any outliers, build them back up to where everyone's trending towards the annual targets and the stretch target. This is a good time to also make sure, especially with 4 to 6 stars and beyond, that all the contractors on site and any contractor relevant to the energy performance or water performance of a building, they have KPIs in place in their contracts. They're very invested to meet these targets with you, and it is a part of their contractual arrangements. And as much as we'd like to say, getting to 6 stars can happen without significant capital works, it does require significant capital works. If there's a huge lift upgrade happening, particularly if the lifts are very old, that can nearly get you a whole star NABERS improvement, as well as if the building's got a lot of escalators, if you're changing the BMS, so it's a lot more optimized, building management system, a lot of those things can potentially lift you a whole star. So you want to look out for that. It's also, this is when design is at play, new buildings that were designed really efficiently. So, spaces were designed for thermal comfort conditions, and there weren't spaces that had a lot of, potentially the air conditioning or heating had to work at 200% more just to make the space meet the thermal comfort requirements. So a very good opportunity to, obviously, if you've got a development team in your business or you are being able to get involved in the design phase, making sure spaces are designed to be most efficiently heated and cooled is such a big win here, because there are some times where the design didn't consider energy efficiency or water efficiency in it. So it can be a shame. So this 6-star phase, we've talked about significant capital works. Good time also now, on-site renewables. If you've got a nice flat roof, good facing the sun, no shading, potentially a solar project, very good for customers to see, that you're invested in sustainability. It doesn't usually get you a whole star, but can give you a nice little nudge in the right direction. And also being in Australia with a lot of sun, obviously you get your payback a lot quicker nowadays in particular. Lastly, at this phase, we have talked about, all the OPEX that you can find at site has been utilised and sought out. But we do want to mention here, 6 stars, especially in the office sector, it's only in the last 5 years it's really emerged. That we've only recently, in the last financial report, had 65 sites rated at 6 stars, which is fantastic, but it is 3% of the market. So don't be disheartened. Rome wasn't built in a day. If you are at the beginning, it can take time, a lot of investment, but it's definitely worth it. So now we're going to hear from the hotel sector, Cindy Vandervelde, who is a sustainability manager at ProInvest.
With your strategy, I believe, and also your general approach to ensuring that your building is more sustainable and future-proofed for the long term, be mindful that things will have to adapt and things will evolve. We're seeing investors across the entire globe asking us what are our NABERS ratings, which is fantastic. So we've got in-house development teams that look after the building, in-house operations team, as well as asset management. So to be able to look after that asset full circle has been great. And also having the key resources across the industry be able to support us in that journey and actually be willing and active to do that. There are benefits across the board, whether it's to the people, the planet, or your profits. And finding out what your key drivers are will really help you push those initiatives across, get stakeholder buy-in for it, and then also serve as that goalpost and that level of commitment to push you through to actually achieve those things.
So Cindy highlighted some focuses that are essential at that high performance end of the market. She spoke a lot to speaking back to investors, knowing the drivers of sustainability, and they had a really big strategy. They have carbon neutral targets, and they finally have their first hotel that's got a carbon neutral rating, which is fantastic to see. She also spoke to future-proofing assets and that climate resilience piece, which is really important. You need to also make sure assets and buildings are being able to withstand the weather conditions in the next 30 to 50 years. So she's definitely on the high-performing side, and that's getting us to really where we are at today. That now, technically, we've all achieved 6 stars, so it's time to celebrate, share your story, help others show how you need to do it. But really, 6 stars is not the end. As I mentioned at the start, you've got that stretch target of carbon neutrality, but there's lots more things you can do here. So one in particular is the 100% renewables piece. As much as you can be electrifying your building, so tuning down, turning off gas as much as possible, and then buying into power purchasing agreements so all your energy can be from renewable farms and hopefully within the state too, so locally sourced renewable energy. That's a double win. Another thing that's really useful to work towards is, especially with waste, circular economy. All the market-leading companies have very strong circular economy principles and reporting, and that's really being the stewardships of your materials and making sure that you care, the downstream effects of where materials, when they leave site, where are they going, and making sure your waste contracts have in the contracts mechanisms so you can actually try and move waste to better outcomes. Because ideally, you want the plastic bottle to come back to the plastic bottle. And lastly, something we didn't get to talk to too much today, but the indoor environment. People are in these spaces, people are indoors a lot. You want to make sure the spaces are as healthy as possible. Everyone has witnessed the events of COVID and the fires. So as much as we can be making these spaces as healthily ventilated is a really strong part of also sustainability strategy. It's the indoor environment. But that's all we've really got time for with our getting to 6 stars and beyond sustainability today. I'll just quickly reiterate the building blocks that's required for getting a good sustainability strategy. And that was, finding your baseline with data for energy, water and waste. You want to then use that to set the ambitious, realistic targets that are monthly, annual and stretch. Then you want to be able to work out the staged approach. So the activities involved in that 4th part, which is the budget of the measure and management pillars, making sure you've got the right third-party reporting mechanisms you're reporting to, but you also have the right operational upgrades as well as capital works programs to be able to get you to those 6 stars and beyond. And then you've really built and embedded sustainability in your business. So you've got the publicly committed targets and you're all ready to go. So hopefully you feel confident and empowered wherever you're at in your journey to get going, get moving, because we are really united in action and the time to act is now. So thanks for listening to my speech. And now we will listen to or answer some questions from the audience. Let me move to the question box. Okay. I want to start working on waste for my building. How do NABERS waste ratings work? So yeah, especially with waste at NABERS, we have a kind of a tiered option. So if you're just beginning and you're potentially in a sector that, it might even just be very hard to get your waste data. There's something which we call the waste platform. So you can just put your data into the platform and there's different graphs that you can see and have the recycling rate, the total tonnes generated and waste intensity metrics. So that's in the waste platform. Then if you're kind of in sectors that are a bit, ready to do a bit more for waste, at the moment that's mostly hotels and shopping centres, you can do something called a verification report. And that's when you use an assessor to do, although you get access to the waste platform, you're using an assessor to do some of the data quality checks required that align to the BBP waste integrity standards. And you're also starting to look at your MRS, material recovery score, which is really that circularity of materials, with each material stream ending up leaving your site, where is it going and is that the highest outcome possible? And that verification report gives you obviously your verified performance of the 12 months. And then if you are in the office sector, you can do a waste rating. So that means you have the waste platform, you still get the verification report, but we have got the algorithm in place because we've had enough people participate so you can see your performance 0 to 6 stars. So kind of easy, non-technical outcome. All right. In my company's first sustainability manager, so in my company's first sustainability manager, it's just me. How do I connect to others? So yeah, sometimes, or most of the time, sustainability does start as a one-man, one-woman band. And it can be a process where it's a bit daunting at first because, yes, as I spoke to at the beginning, the processes aren't in place, the programs aren't really designed for you. But it's a really good time to firstly reach out to your business because there's always the unlikely sustainability champions, sitting in finance or wherever else that might want to come to, your once a month green meetings, and they can help you with some on the ground changes that you might want to do for, putting in more recycling bins in the kitchen, removing under desk bins, or working on some LED lighting upgrades, things that you can do in your tenancy. Another useful thing, if you're alone in your sustainability team, would be trying to utilise the networks as much as possible. In Sydney in particular, we've got the BBP, which is Better Buildings Partnerships, which is an aggregate of lots of the different leading property companies in the office space and a lot of the tourism companies for the hotel part of the BBP, called SDP, Sustainable Destinations Partnerships. As much as you can be relying on these networks, because they're going to give you really bite-sized, helpful bits of information that you can focus on, and they've kind of done a lot of the work for you, so you can rely on them to be really helpful. Also, it's probably really helpful to start to build the business case that, if you do want to get to that stretch target and you've worked out your staged approach and all that, you might need a few more people on board and trying to get that in the budget. So ongoing, you're constantly saying, a bigger team does help because it's obviously one man, one woman band can be quite hard, particularly when they're large companies. Okay, we've got another question from Sue Kenny. I was interested in this deep dive for residential aged care developments, the small scale provider with a one site redevelopment upgrade. I'm finding that the advice is, very geared towards multi-property commercial companies. Any tips for a small scale provider? Yeah, good question. Look, I do hope that kind of structure of the sustainability strategy, although some of my examples were more property based for offices and things like that, the structure is still the same. You need to make sure you find where your data is, the online data management programs, the setting of the targets, and that, as I went through, the measure and management pillar, then getting your budgeting approved and embedding sustainability in your organisation. I do really think they're key things that in any sector, that's the structure of how you get to move up and progress in your sustainability strategy. So let me just rephrase this question. I'm a tenant. Is sustainability something that my landlord can help me with? Yeah, okay, an interesting one. So the tenant-landlord relationship, this is in the office sector. It can be interesting because, yes, there's certain parts, obviously the tenancy is what the tenant can manage, but then the owner has obviously all the shared services. We do something called co-assess ratings, which is where we assess the base building, so all the shared services of a building, along with the tenancies. So kind of tenants and building owners can work together to be able to achieve be able to understand their NABERS outcome. So if you end up at 2 stars with your co-assess rating, you can work together to try work on improvements to go further and progress in the right direction. That is that question. So I think that's all the questions. If you have any more questions, please send them through. If I answered too fast, you can say that as well, and I can go into more detail on any of the questions that I answered. We'll give it a couple more seconds, but it does look like it might be finished. Well, then I might wrap this up. There's a few more sessions. Well, there's a whole stream of 4 different sessions coming up next. You can go look at the catalytic role of energy efficiency in reaching net zero targets. There's also a session on delivering maximum returns with energy efficiency. But if you missed anything, you can see all the other sessions that were recorded today through the main website. But thank you for your time.